We're going to talk about consolidating data. There's a lot of ways to consolidate data in Excel. This is one of them. We're going to set up the data consolidation. We're going to consolidate by column, and then we're going to consolidate by row, and then we're going to consolidate by columns and rows, and then we're going to consolidate by selection, where we determine what consolidation Excel is going to perform on the data. And when we set up the data consolidation, we can also link to the source so that when it updates, our consolidated data updates as well. So I've got a workbook set up and a worksheet that's blank. We're going to fill it in with some data consolidations from control page down, Q1, where I have some sales information for Q1, quarter one, control page down, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four. The thing to note is all of these quarters are set up and oriented similarly. The column headers are all the same, so the data is consistent in its format, in the way it's laid out. The data consolidation dialog box can be found on the Data tab in the Data Tools group. The first field is filled in for us, function sum, which is what we're going to do. We're going to sum the data, but we can also count, average, get the maximum, minimum, the product of all the values. We can perform some statistical functions, but to keep it straightforward, we're going to sum the data. In order to set this up, you need to begin at the point where you want the data consolidated to, which is what we've done. We're on our blank worksheet. That's where we want to consolidate the data. And when we define the reference, we can define the reference in other workbooks, which we're not going to do, by browsing, or within this workbook, which is what we are going to do. The cursor is blinking. I'm going to go to Q1, left-clicking and dragging, beginning in column B, and I went down below the data that's displayed in Q1 for a reason, which will become clear in a second. I'm going to add that reference, and then I'm going to left-click 2, and Q1 went down as far as row 20. Q2 goes down to row 22. Since I selected a range that extends beyond Q1, I've also accommodated Q2. And in our selection field, the reference field, Excel has advanced to Q2, so I can add Q2, left-click Q3, add Q3, left-click Q4, and add Q4. So now I've got my data set up, all my references defined. And I can left-click OK and get a consolidated result that means nothing. It's consolidated the data, but I have no idea what that data is by looking at it. I have no row headers, I have no column headers, there's no definition to the data. So I'm going to left-click in column G, left-click Consolidate, and Excel has remembered all of the references we just established, and I'm going to consolidate by the left column. Left-clicking OK. Now I've got some data that's a little bit more understandable. I've got the customers that are listed, but I still don't know what the 8150 is or the 1570 is. I mean, we could go back and look at the source data and determine that, but just by looking from this vantage point, you can't tell. So I need some more information than that. Left-click and Consolidate. I can also consolidate by the row, and I get something similar to what we just got, only we have the column headers instead of the row headers, and the data is equally meaningless, really, from this vantage point. So for our purpose, what we want to do is consolidate by row and column, and now I've got something that's more meaningful. Although the consolidation of the price doesn't really make much sense, because that's not the price that was paid for the 1,570 items. That's an accumulated sum total of all the prices for each of those transactions, so that is fairly meaningless. So maybe what I really want to do is determine what columns and rows that I want Excel to use to consolidate. I'm going to take all of the customers, and I'm going to take the quantity and the total and have Excel consolidate just those selections. Left-clicking Consolidate, left-clicking that function again. Now I really get what I'm after. I have the consolidated totals for each of the customers, the quantities listed, and the extended total sales amount is listed, and this is a consolidated total for each of the quarters. The downside to the consolidation function is that cell M11, where you would expect to find customer as a header, is blank. We can obviously remedy that by inputting customer. Now that's all fine and great, and for this purpose maybe that would suffice. We've consolidated some data in Q1, Q2, 3, and 4, which if we've closed the year out, that data is not going to change, and these consolidated totals therefore won't need to be updated. But let's say we're dealing with some dynamic data that changes. I'm going to get rid of all of this, pressing delete, go into cell B4, left-click Consolidate. Excel provides an option to create links to source data. When we left-click that, we'll not only get a link, left-clicking OK, we also have Excel establish an outline. Now once again, the customer header is missing, but this data is a sum of the details that were brought in for each one of the customers, and the details listed above are cells that are linked to the source data. That's from Q1, that's from Q2, that's from Q3, and so on. And in addition to pulling in all that data, establishing links, and summarizing it, Excel has created an outline of the data as well. So that is using the Consolidated feature in Excel. We set up a data consolidation by referencing source data within the same workbook we are consolidating in. We could consolidate by column, we could consolidate by row, we can consolidate by both column and row, and we can determine what columns and rows are going to be consolidated by Excel by first setting those up in the target worksheet for the data consolidation. We also finally had the ability to link to the source data so that when it updates, our consolidated data updates as well.